What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports Network. We are completely finished with the Week 7 slate of games. All the injuries, all the games, all the highlights from Week 7 are all completely over. Now we're kind of digesting all of that, getting into the Week 7 waiver wire, talking about all the players that are trending up, trending down, players that you should add, and the players that you should allow your teammates, your league mates, to add. Before we get started, as always, I want to make sure that you guys smash the like button if you do like the content. You guys have no idea how much it helps me out. Plus, it helps me figure out what kind of videos y'all enjoy watching. So make sure you smash that like button as well. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscriptions bar as well as that notifications bell. I got over 45% of y'all right now watching this video that have not subscribed to the channel. So make sure you hit that subscriptions bar and that like button if you like the content. Now, some housekeeping things to get out of the way as we get into this week's episode. Of course, we got to discuss some of these injuries that happened this week. We had a slew of injuries and a lot of big injuries that impacted a lot of fantasy football lineups, particularly to the wide receiver position. So when it comes to wide receivers, of course, we had Puka Nacua was the first one to go down. We also saw Puka Nacua go down. Puka Nacua went down and came back in later in the game, but didn't get any targets. So we're going to have to monitor him with that. Looks like a slight ankle sprain. He is day to day. Now I know his status for this London game this coming Sunday is in doubt. It might have to do with the traveling to London. The care may not be the same, but either way, we're going to have to monitor the best player in fantasy football as this week goes on. Then we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. go out with a concussion against the Indianapolis Colts. He is also probably going to be doubtful for this week as well. Then you have Garrett Wilson. It originally started out as a hip injury, but then they downgraded it or changed it to a knee injury. At the end of the game, they basically just said he's dealing with an injury. They didn't really give us much information on it whatsoever. But looks like he's going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks with this injury. Then you have Emeka Egbuka from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the breakout rookie who's been having a phenomenal year. He is going to be missing some time this week as well as the hamstring injury. 1 to 3 weeks, expected to miss a couple of games. And in that aspect, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver core is absolutely decimated. You're looking at Egbuka with the hamstring. Mike Evans is out. Chris Godwin's is out. Jalen McMillan is out. They're all out or limited. So right now you're looking at the top 4 wide receiver options in Tampa Bay all being out. Then you had the Calvin Ridley injury as well. Calvin Ridley is going to be out. It's looking like he's doubtful at least for this week. It's going to be a hamstring injury. You have David Njoku who had the knee injury. He's uncertain this week. And then you have Blake Corum, the handcuff, who also is day-to-day with the ankle right now. And then one that I didn't get to add on here. Oh, no, we did talk about the Garrett Wilson hyperextended knee injury that we did have on here. I did want to make sure we got that as well. That creates a massive target void in the Jets offense, which we are going to be talking about here a little bit later. Now, of course, getting into the remainder of what we got going on today, we're going to discuss some of these bye weeks that we have going on. I want to get into not just the bye weeks that we have this week, but I want to get into next week's bye weeks as well. I feel like not enough people really ever talk about the bye weeks coming from the other from the coming weeks, because you might want to get ahead of having that player, that defense, that quarterback, whatever it is that may be on a bye next week, because next week we do have 6 teams on a bye. This week you have the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. Hopefully you get Lamar Jackson back after this bye week. You're looking at no James Cook. You're looking at no Keon Coleman, no Khalil Shakir, no Josh Allen. A lot of big losses in this week, and then these 2 powerhouse AFC teams taking a bye week. But then, like I said, next week you got the Arizona Cardinals, Detroit Lions, Los Angeles Rams, Seattle Seahawks, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Las Vegas Raiders, who are all going to be on a bye next week as well. So make sure that if you see your team on a bye in these coming weeks, you get out there and you get ahead of that bye week. You get ahead of that transaction. This might be the time for you to jump ahead of your league mates and grab that defense, grab that quarterback, whatever may help you in these coming weeks. Now, of course, getting into all the waiver wire pickups, the trending up players. Of course, I'm going to start with the players that should be already rostered in your fantasy football league. Now, when it comes to your fantasy football league, like I said, you should already have most of these players rostered. If for some reason they are still available in your fantasy football league, then we want to go out and we want to grab these players right here. Like I said, you're looking at Caleb Williams, Daniel Jones at quarterback. Then you have Rico Dowdle, Woody Marks at running back, Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Downs at wide receiver, and Dallas Goedert, Hunter Henry at the tight end position. Now, these players are going to be the ones that you need to have rostered already in your league. Like I said, if they are for some reason available, we want to go out there. We want to jump on those players and grab them, add them to our roster. Most of these players right here are actually going to be available to be started pretty much right away as well in your fantasy football roster. Now, the first player we want to talk about when it comes to pardon me. Well, the first player we want to talk about when it comes to the priority ads that we want to have this week, it's going to be Kamani Vidal from the Los Angeles Chargers. You're looking at Omarion Hampton likely to miss more than the 4 weeks that we originally thought he was going to miss. You're looking at Kamani Vidal taking the majority of the snaps this last week. You're looking at him also. You're looking at John Harbaugh was talking up Hassan Haskins a lot, as Hassan Haskins was going to be the starting running back, but that just simply was not the case. Kamani Vidal, he did take 63% snap share, 50% route participation, and he was very efficient when running the ball as well. He had 6.9 yards per carry. He's definitely going to be the priority ad, the top ad, and he's got an absolutely amazing schedule coming up as well. Like I said, you're looking at Omarion Hampton missing more than 4 weeks. You're looking at maybe not getting Omarion Hampton back until about week 13 or 14, and throughout the process between now week 7 and week 13, 14, when you could potentially get Omarion Hampton back, you're looking at the schedule for the Los Angeles Chargers being extremely easy when it comes to the defensive rushing, the rushing defenses that they play. And then you're also looking at the fact that you're going to be having him for almost the entirety of the remainder of the fantasy football season. That's huge. So I would be aggressive when it came to the fab on him. I'm dropping 25 to 35% of my fab on Kamani Vidal, and I'm trying to lock him in as quick as possible. Now, the next player we're going to be talking about on the list is going to be Harold Fannin Jr. from the Cleveland Browns. With the David Njoku injury, you're looking at Harold Fannin Jr. having a spike in his usage rate. He jumped all the way up to 84% this week when it came to his usage rate. He tied for the team lead in targets and posted a career high in targets and receptions this week as well. He's your top streaming tight end this week, even despite who I'm about to talk about next. You're looking at Harold Fannin being the top option with the David Njoku injury, with Jerry Jeudy struggling, as we all kind of expected Jerry Jeudy to do. And you're looking at him being a safety blanket for Dylan Gabriel as well. A lot of these teams like to use those tight ends as that safety blanket, and Dylan Gabriel is not seeming to throw the ball downfield very much at all. Harold Fannin is going to be somebody that you're going to want to plug in your lineup immediately, and he can start to give you some points. Next tight end we're going to be talking about is pardon me. Next tight end we're going to be talking about on the list is a tight end that a lot of people are adding in to a lot of their rosters right now. I'm looking at Oronde Gadsden from the Los Angeles Chargers. He's a rising talent in this Los Angeles Chargers offense. This Chargers offense is often forced to pass. You're looking at the route participation for Oronde growing steadily. You're looking at him starting out with like 20% target share. Then he jumped up to about 50% target share. Then he was at 63% target share this week. He also tied with Ladd McConkey for the team lead in targets and receptions. Like I said, he led the team in targets in week 6. He's a high upside rookie. He's gaining trust in this offense, and he's seeming to be the number 2 option. Now, you're looking at this offense being one that's going to always spread the ball around, but Oronde Gadsden being that tight end is really starting to come into his own, and this rookie is really starting to take off. You're looking at him being able to be plug and played into this Los Angeles Chargers offense with ease. Now, coming up, we're talking about the running back ads that we're going to add. There's not a ton of things available on the waiver wire this week for you. Now, however, there is going to be something for everybody. No matter what you need, there is something or somebody that is going to be out there for you. Now, moving on, like I said, to the running backs. Starting out, we're going to be talking about Bam Knight from the Arizona Cardinals. Bam Knight, he came out this week. He had an amazing game, and you're looking at him being available in 99% of leagues. Bam Knight played the majority of the snaps this week. He handled most of the early down work, and he got all of the goal line work. The usage is there for Bam Knight. You want to stash him immediately. He's got immediate touchdown upside, and he's a preferred player when it comes to standard over PPR. He doesn't get involved into the passing game very often, so you're going to get a lot more value out of him if you're playing in standard. But I'm liking Bam Knight a lot. He took over that Michael Carter role. When you were expecting Michael Carter to take the Amari Demercado role, Amari Demercado take the step back, Bam Knight jumped up over both of them. Bam Knight took the majority of the snaps in this offense this week. Bam Knight's somebody you want to add. And then moving on, Tyjae Spears. You're looking at him being an elite stash running back right now. He led the Titans running backs in snaps, routes run, and targets this week. And he's a top 15 running back if you look at Tony Pollard ever going down. He's a stash with huge upside, and when it comes to PPR, he gets heavily involved in the passing game as well. Kenneth Gainwell from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's going to be somebody we're going to be looking into stashing as well. He's also on the trending tab. You're looking at him starting to eat into Jaylen Warren's production. You're looking at Jaylen Warren getting 30 snaps to 21 for Kenneth Gainwell. It's starting to become almost a split even backfield, which is exactly what Jaylen Warren owners were afraid of. Now, take this with caution, take this with a grain of salt, because Jaylen Warren just coming back from the injury, were they easing him back into his role? You never know. But like we have been talking about for the last few weeks, Kenneth Gainwell has played well enough. He's gained well enough that you think that he's probably started to add a starting position in this, not a starting position, but a more valuable position, starting to earn more carries, more of a role in this offense. Then moving on to some of our handcuffs, players that were really dropping 0% fab on most likely. The other running backs I was willing to drop about 1 to 5%. Isaiah Davis and Jaden Blue, mostly going to be handcuffs. If somebody hasn't picked him up this week, everybody's talking about these two. If somebody hasn't picked him up by now, I'm not going to waste any fab on them. But you're looking at Isaiah Davis being a handcuff stash, like I said about Kenneth Gainwell with Jaylen Warren, or about Tyjae Spears with Tony Pollard. You're looking at it, if Breece Hall ever goes down, you're looking at Isaiah Davis becoming the lead back in a run-heavy offense. He's a pure stash at this point, doesn't have much standalone value. And the same thing with Jaden Blue. He's going to be a running back that's going to be mostly used as a pure stash. Something ever happened to Javonte Williams, he's one injury away from a massive role in this backfield. Moving on to the wide receivers that you should be adding, and there's a lot more wide receivers we're going to be talking about than we had in running backs. Most of the running backs we were willing to spend, like I said, 1 to 5%. We have a different little bit of a list here for the wide receivers, starting with Jordan Whittington from the Los Angeles Rams. I think he's the most valuable spot start you can have when it comes to the wide receiver position this week. You're looking at him being an immediate streamer if Puka Nacua misses time. When Puka Nacua missed time last year in weeks 4 and 5, you're looking at Jordan Whittington averaging 9 targets per game and 12 PPR points per game as well. He's a streamer. He's a spot start. It's preferred to start him in PPR if you can. I'm recommending dropping 5 to 7% of my fab on him, especially if you're in need at that wide receiver position. And then with all the Tampa Bay Buccaneers injuries, you're looking at the Tampa Bay wide receivers. Like I said, the top 4 wide receivers are going to be hurt. So you're looking at Sterling Shepard. If I had to bet on Tez Johnson or Kevin Johnson or Sterling Shepard would be the one that I want to target the most. He'd be the one I'd be willing to bet on the most. He's got the most upside. Expect Baker to spread the ball around in this offense, though, so do take that with a grain of salt. I think with all the top options being out, even Cade Otton, all of the options are going to get involved in this offense. I'm not looking to drop a ton on Sterling Shepard, but I'd be willing to drop up to 5%, about 3 to 5% on Sterling Shepard if you need a wide receiver to start this week and you can't get Jordan Whittington. Moving down, we're going to Alec Iomanner from the Tennessee Titans. He's definitely worth a spot start as well at the current moment with Calvin Ridley's injury. He was already looking at the number 2 as the number 2 option in this offense, leading or slowly or just barely behind Calvin Ridley in targets, receptions, things of that nature. You're looking at Alec Iomanner now jumping up to that number 1 wide receiver role, but it could be something that might be too much for him to handle. You're looking at sometimes when a wide receiver steps up, you expect them to take that step up like Devontae Smith was before A.J. Brown. You expect that wide receiver to take that step up as the number 1 wide receiver, and they just cannot handle the pressure. Alec Iomanner, can he handle the pressure? We do not know that 100%. Right now, I'm not willing to drop a ton on him. If he is available in your league, look at dropping about 3 to 5% on him. I think you're looking at next man up. You're looking at him getting a ton more volume than he's already got. There's a big target void now in this offense that Calvin Ridley leaves. You're looking at Alec Iomanner already getting a ton of opportunity in this offense. With this injury, you're looking at it just becoming a bigger opportunity for him. We'll see what he can do with it. Moving on, Jaden Higgins from the Houston Texans. I know I'm skipping past Kendrick Bourne, but I wanted to talk about Jaden Higgins because Jaden Higgins is another one of those players that we're talking about as an immediate add for us. Now, with Jaden Higgins, you're looking at him being on a bye week this week, so he's more of just going to be a stash player, of course, for you. But you're looking at the Houston Texans. They've been really struggling to generate any momentum in offense, really just start struggling to get anything going. And if they're going to do anything, it's going to be after the bye week when they have time to scheme it up. You're looking at Jaden Higgins coming in. He played a career-high snaps, targets, and receiving yards in week 5, and the Texans are likely scheming up a bigger role for him at the current moment. You can't just allow Nico Collins to be the only person playing football and hope that either Nick Chubb or Woody Marks can break a big one. You're looking at Jaden Higgins is probably hopefully going to take at least that Tank Dell role as they start to come out of that bye week. So you're looking at him being somebody, of course, like I said, as just a pure stash, pretty much a free ad at this point. And now that we're talking about the free ads, I want to talk about Kendrick Bourne. He's fool's gold to me at the current moment. Now, of course, you're looking at him coming up with back-to-back weeks of 142 yards. How is that even possible that he could be fool's gold? But you're looking at it, you're saying you don't know how long Juwan Jennings is going to be out. You don't know how long Ricky Pearsall is going to be out. on top of that, you're looking at, you don't know the fact of how long Mac Jones is going to be playing quarterback for Kendrick Bourne. You don't know what the chemistry is like with Kendrick Bourne and Brock Purdy. We have no idea how much things are going to change in these coming weeks for this San Francisco 49ers offense. They're dealing with like 5 injuries a week at this point. It feels like it's absolutely insanity. The strength and conditioning team in San Francisco needs to be investigated. Something needs to happen because the amount of injuries that San Francisco takes year after year after year is just, it's ungodly. I can't lie to you. But Kendrick Bourne, he's a great spot start if you need somebody in desperation, especially in a PPR standpoint. He's getting a ton of volume. He's got a lot of upside, but how long will that upside last? How long will that window stay open? That is the big question, and that's what keeps me from really wanting to drop much for Kendrick Bourne. I would love to grab him as a free ad, but at this point, you probably can't. So I'd be willing to drop up to 5% of my fab on him. And then finishing things out, we got Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas from the New England Patriots. I think both are going to be fool's gold for you. Don't really jump on the production that you saw this last weekend. You're looking at this being, I mean, look at Kayshon Boutte. You look at him in week 1. He had an amazing game. People added him in week 1, and then he virtually disappeared until this last week. He was barely involved in the offense, and this is the kind of offense that the New England Patriots are running. For a couple of weeks, it'll be Hunter Henry. It'll be the tight ends. Then they're going to switch up their game plan. It's going to go to the running backs. Then it's going to be Kayshon Boutte, Stephon Diggs. Then it's going to be Demario Douglas. It's just going to be constantly rotating, and you're going to frustrate yourself by adding either Demario Douglas or Kayshon Boutte to your roster and trying to figure out which weeks is going to be the week that they go off. And then you have Jalen Coker from the Carolina Panthers. He's a great deep stash. He's got high upside when he's healthy. And then you're looking at a lot of banged up wide receivers in this Carolina Panthers offense as well. So you're looking at Jalen Coker being somebody that I definitely wouldn't mind adding to my roster right now. Moving on, finishing things up, we're going to wrap it up with the tight ends and then the defenses as well. Tight end streamers is going to be very easy. You guys know it's my favorite time of the year when I get to talk about Cotton. Cade Otton finally getting on the waiver wire episode for the first time in 2025 after seeming to dominate the waiver wire episode in 2024. Now, Cade Otton, he's probably going to be my third priority in tight end if you just need a streaming tight end. If you've got, a Dalton Kincaid, a Mark Andrews, which hopefully you didn't have to start them anyway because they've been some struggling options for you at tight end. But you're looking at Cade Otton, like I said, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers. Everybody's going to get involved in this offense. This is Cade Otton's time to get involved in the offense, and he has a great matchup this week as well. You're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers having a good enough matchup that I would be willing to start Cade Otton in my lineup this week. I'm dropping 5 to 10% of my fab on Cade Otton. Then Evan Ingram and Isaiah Likely are more stash tight ends right now. I wouldn't want to have to put them in my offense or in my lineup. Evan Ingram, Denver is trying to get him more involved. He's a solid volume-based streamer. I'd be willing to drop 3% at most on Evan Ingram. And then Isaiah Likely, more of a deep stash, more of a tentative stash, thinking that Mark Andrews is not getting any younger. They like the young upside in Isaiah Likely. And then you also look at the fact that Mark Andrews might get traded before the trade deadline, because what do the Ravens have to lose right now with Mark Andrews? Absolutely nothing. And if anything happens to Mark Andrews, you look at him being an instant plug-and-play tight end number 1. Now, finishing things off, we're going with the defensive streamers. Defenses are always easy. We want to pick people that are mostly at home if we can. We want to pick people that are favored to win their game by a large margin. So with that being said, we're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. I think they're going to have a great matchup for you against the Bengals. You're looking at the New England Patriots versus the Tennessee Titans, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Minnesota Vikings, the Denver Broncos versus the Giants, and the Chiefs at the Raiders. Now, of course, we didn't really talk much about quarterbacks this week. Quarterbacks is going to be the same story that we've had for the last few weeks, so I didn't really bother making a graphic for them this week. You're looking at, of course, Jared Goff. They're going to have a pretty good game this week. I think Jared Goff is definitely earning some startability. I think Detroit Buccaneers is going to be a game where you're going to be finding both teams highly unlikely to not score points. So Jared Goff should be putting up points in this game. He's got a safe floor with a high ceiling. Aaron Rodgers against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football is a desperation start. If you need a quarterback, the Bengals are allowing the 4th most points per game to quarterbacks, so it's a decent opportunity with a safe floor for Aaron Rodgers. And then Jackson Dart, of course, from the New York Giants. More of a long-term ad, but I do like him less this week with his matchup. He's playing the Denver Broncos, who have allowed a bottom 5 points per game to the quarterback position. So if I can stay away from Jackson Dart this week, I will, but I do like him more long-term than anybody else. Now, that's going to do it for today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Keep your chin up and your attitude down. I'm going to see y'all next time. Peace out. Jesus fucking Christ.